going first, I guess.
Technical difficulties.
It is always the first
That's-
and second.
Yeah, him and Andy. Andy's done like 2 shows. He's done 2 shows as well. So that's kind of, it's never happened before.
This is our luck. The rain came because the traffic was bad. Now this is not. Now we're going to be late for the other meeting. I am. I'm always. It's another 5 minutes of that.
What camera am I working with? Which one am I looking at?
Yeah.
Which camera am I looking at? That one.
And which camera are we looking?
No, don't worry about that.
right.
You look at it. I have to, I just, when I start, then
Cool.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dr. Silva. I have a few guests here today, and please introduce yourselves.
Latifa Woodhouse, a mother, a teacher, a member of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Shelter Rock, presently serving on the board of the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is our denomination. So happy to be here.
I'm glad that you're here.
And I'm Colin Woodhouse, assistant to Latifa Woodhouse.
And please, what are we talking about today? What is the title of this show?
Well, you know, we thought it would be helpful to talk about the refugee crisis and how we got involved as a family. We started back in 2015 when we saw that the international picture of Alan Kurdi, this young Syrian baby, washed ashore in Turkey, face down, laying face down, and being picked up by a Turkish soldier. And I couldn't understand how this could happen. And it started me looking into what's going on, because I heard about the refugee crisis, but it was something distant. And then this just struck a chord in me, because we have 4 children. And when I went back to
We have 5 children.
5 children, sorry. When we went back to, we try to forget that one. But I went back to the congregation. I happened to talk to a Turkish congregant, and he was saying, "Did you see that picture? I can't believe it. Here's this young baby, extremely well dressed with booties on, and somebody really the mother really cared for him, and he's now dead." And so we started looking into what was going on, and I saw something on the internet where there were like 20 or 30 boats crashing ashore onto Lesbos, and people were throwing their tubes up, and they were yelling Allah Akbar, and they were running out of off the boats and kissing the earth. And I thought, this is bigger than I ever thought. And then I began to investigate it, and Latifa can take it from there. It took me a while. I went to a concert in Brooklyn. I didn't tell my family I was looking into this. I just wanted to feel it myself and do investigation. So I spent a couple months looking into what was going on there. I went to this this.
Concert.
It was a concert in Brooklyn on behalf of Syrians, and I got more information, got to meet some people, got to find out where references were, and there was an information site for volunteers, and that began my serious sense of where should be doing something. And then
Latifa,
Well,
what made you decide that you
well,
wanted
what
to?
made me decide, my reasons are a little bit different than Colin's, because I come from a family where my parents came as refugees to the United States of America in the 70s when the Russian took over Afghanistan.
Right.
Two of my uncles were executed at that time, and my father, who was the mayor of Zabul at the time, the Russian government was after him. So according to me, because I had no contact with them, felt like my father was also executed.
Right.
But one day, out of nowhere, Colin came home and gave me a telegram from my dad that my dad needed me to call him. When I called him, he was in Pakistan, and he told me, please save us. Your brother and I are here. We escaped with, he played the role of a sick man with a mask, and my brother was his helper. In the fruit trucks that they bring from Kandahar to Quetta and then Karachi, that's where they got out of the country that way. Otherwise, they would have killed my dad. So he left everybody else behind, which was my grandmother, mother, and I'm one of 10 children, so the 9 children and my brother's wife. And he said, we need your help to get them out and also to, do something for us to come to America, because I was their only hope here in the United States. I had come before them on a Fulbright scholarship from Kandahar, Afghanistan. So of course that was a very happy moment for me to hear my dad's voice after 4 years being here and to talk to him, but also was very sad that now my parents were refugees. Thanks to Colin and to the United States government, with his help, that he was a foreign student advisor and knew a lot about immigration. Right. We both went to the State Department, and they sent a special officer to interview my father, my mother, and my brothers and sisters. At the time, they had all come, this is after 6 months, and gave them a refugee status. So I know what my parents went through. I know what my brothers and sisters went through. Their life from what it was in Afghanistan changed to a one-room bedroom for 13 people living, and practically their skin came off, they got lice, all kinds of other diseases in Pakistan, in Karachi, Pakistan, because the weather was hot and they didn't have enough food to eat. And I know what that was like firsthand. So because of that, and also, as Colin mentioned, as Alan Kurdi was washed to the shore, and the media was all over, the first thing I did, without even talking to Colin, I'm on the Social Justice Committee of the congregation, and I went to the Social Justice Committee and I said, guys, what are we doing? Look at the media, look at what's happening in the other side of the world. And they said, well, what would you like us to do? I said, I would like, and I was also on the board of trustees of my congregation, serving as a board member at large. I said, let's do a petition for our large grant, and let's go and help these refugees. And yes, I had great support from my Social Justice Committee. We did a petition, 35 names, went to the board unanimously accepted it, and the congregation was kind enough during the process of our large grant the year, gave $200,000 for the refugee crisis in Greece. And we sent $100,000 through the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, and the other $100,000 went to SAM, which is Syrian medical staff, at the board of Jordan and Yemen. So that was a great thing, but I didn't sit still with that, because Colin and I said, okay, this is the congregation help, and that's great. But what are we going to do as a family? Because the title of this talk is a local activist family from Long Island involved in the refugee causes, in the refugee issues. Mm-hmm. So he and I, and then we shared it. It was Thanksgiving, actually. Our whole family was there, all my daughters, my son, and we said, "What, your dad and I are going to go to Lesbos, into Athens, Greece. What do you guys think?" And of course, one of my daughter, Alexandra Woodhouse, who is my social justice queen, I always call her, she says, "I'm going too," And then the other one said, "Well, how could we help?" Because they all have
Right.
jobs and they were all working. And of course, everybody got involved, and we created a website, not a website actually, it was a fundraising mechanism through CrowdRise.
Okay.
And with the help of my children, our children, we raised about $20,000 for the first 4 weeks. And that was a great amount of money for us to take. We went on our own, and we also recruited. Colin was very active in the recruitment of other Muslim brothers, because of the Syrian and the Afghan,
Right.
and also people who spoke Arabic. And I went to the Westbury Mosque on Long Island to pull forces, and I went to the board. Dr. Diane Lombardi from the board agreed that she as a doctor wanted to come with us. And Colin
So how
was,
many of you went?
so it was Colin, myself, Alexandra Woodhouse, our daughter, youngest daughter, and Diane Lombardi. That was our group, the first
And
group.
when was this? When did this take place?
This was January 2016. This was when the refugees were still crashing ashore. There wasn't enough help. The High Commissioner for Refugees was struggling to get control of it, and nobody's still gotten control of this crisis. But had it not been for volunteers, many, many more people would have died. The lifeguards pulling people out of the water who had been either overturned or
Arrested.
fallen or needing to be rescued, there were all volunteers. The Coast Guard was not equipped to save lives. When the refugee crisis, the High Commissioner had 10 people in Athens. That was it. So, we just when we came out off the plane, we're coming to our accommodations, and there's a group of people pulled over to the side of the road. There's a fire, and people are running back and forth. There was a boat that had just arrived, and that's when we met. Latifa met this young Afghan girl. A lot of the Afghans would come at the worst time because they would get a discount from the human traffickers. You go in the worst weather, you get a discount. You get maybe a 60% discount, but they're at great risk. And that was when people were dying. They were drowning. So that was. We provided emergency humanitarian aid that first time. The money that which we brought, went for food. It went for medicine. It went to transport refugees to the center. It was really to help people survive. There wasn't enough food. There wasn't enough medicine. And again, had it not been for the volunteers, we would not have had 24/7 healthcare, 24/7 tea tent, 24/7 food, 24/7 clothing being provided outside of the military camp, which was equipped, if you will, by the High Commissioner for Refugees and the Greek military.
So what was it like for a family from Long Island, right? To go to a place like this? What was it like? What was the experiences for yourself personally, as far as emotions, interacting with these people, seeing the conditions that they're living in? What was that like? How can you share your experiences where people will, try to get an idea? Because, like you said before, it was so far-fetched. It was something that was, something you can really relate to. But now you're in the middle of it. You're immersed in this culture. You're immersed in everything that we witness on the media. You're there. How was that interaction? How was the interaction of these refugees with you, and vice versa? What came away from it?
I'm going to jump in, and then Latifa can tell a lot more about it, because she was very much meeting people that she knew, Afghans, and she had the language.
The language, yeah.
But for me, I guess the lesson I learned, these people I'd love to have in my neighborhood, and that we met such extremely resilient, courageous people stubbornly looking for sanctuary, for relief, for education for their kids, engineers, doctors, business people, young college kids who, for no fault of their own, couldn't get an education, or people who've suffered trauma, losing relatives, crossing from Iran into Turkey, having them shot down by the Iranian border guards, or having them freeze to death in a blizzard. We met these people, and they were gathering themselves together again and pushing on, pushing forward. And for me, it was wonderful that we could give people money and for $300, get them to the border of Europe and get them to safety.
To Germany.
At that time, people were moving through. So these folks would come, they'd spend 2 or 3 days in the camp, and they'd move on, and we could help them move on. And I guess what most impacted me is what they left behind were their stories, their tragedy, their triumphs, who they were as people. I still remember them. I can close my eyes. I can see these folks, and there are a lot of smiles. They're not, downtrodden people demanding pity or begging. They're
Right.
good people that, for luck, they could be us. And so that's what I got. Nothing different. Different cultures maybe, different music, different sense of humor, but really for me, it was wonderful to be there with them.
Yeah, I would like to go back to my first impression of the chaos, of the screaming of these people arriving through the GNC, where in a little dinky, in a rubber boat, the capacity would be 20 people, and they would put 85 people. Wow. And they'd be holding on to the rim of this little rubber boat and screaming. And because we saw it, like Colin said, as we were coming from the airport the first time, there's a boat arriving, in the screaming, and we stopped all of a sudden. And then, in a way, thanks to the UNHCR, they had some buses for them, and the volunteers were all there to build the fire, to bring some warm socks. We had 11 boxes of Patagonia jackets, brand new, through my daughter connection with the vice president had contributed that. And of course, we opened one of the boxes and put the jackets on the people. They're all wet, freezing, cold, and this is like 9 o'clock at night, or it was dark. It was dark. So for me, that hit home. And of course, most of the people were Afghans, even though there were some Iraqis and some Syrian. But to me, it was like my mother, my sister, my brother, and this little girl that everybody said she's dying. And we had the doctor with us, Diane Lombardi, who's the pediatrician, and Diane went very close, and she's all frozen. This was hypothermia, and the girl goes to me. Diane was shaking her to wake her up, and she wouldn't. As I went and hugged her, and she said, Khala Jan, that means dear auntie, you speak my language. And I want to tell you something. As we read in the books, talk about death, I had never seen death, but tonight I saw death. In our country, we don't have ocean, we don't have water like this. Through this water that we were getting here, I thought we all died. My mom died, but thank God everybody's alive. And I'm not dead, but I will talk later to the doctor. I'm scared of doctors. Tell the doctor not to see me. This was so sweet. And she's like a 80-year-old young girl. So of course I shared that with Diane, and I said, she doesn't want any shots, any kind of, and Diane said, no, I don't have any shots with me, but I just wanted, to see how she's doing. So of course we put warm socks, jackets, and blankets on her and put her on the bus. So the scene was pretty chaotic, but the hope was that in 2 or 3 days, these people, this was a happy time at that time, would be able to get to the border of Macedonia and go to Germany or Sweden or Norway, the countries that were accepting them. So that was good, but believe me, the 4 weeks we were there, I did not sleep, not one night. And Colin would wake up at 5 o'clock and say, "What are you doing yourself?" Because during the day, from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night, we would be with them. You know, Colin, myself, Alexandra, and Diane in the Health Point Center. I would be, my blessing was that I speak 4 languages. So the languages were the most helpful vehicle that and tools I had, because I speak Farsi, Pashto, and most of these people from Afghanistan speak these 2 languages. Then I speak a little bit of Urdu. There were a lot of Pakistanis from there. And then I speak Arabic, which most Syrian and Iraqi, and plus I grew up Muslim and I understand their rituals, their tradition, their culture. So I was right there in the middle, and they would either call me Khala, which is auntie, or they would call me sister, or I was their mother, or I was their everything. I mean, at the end, I would be walking in the camp and there'd be like 200, 300 people from their tents calling, "Hey, come here, Latifa John, dear Latifa, come here to us, dear auntie, come here to us." It was just an incredible feeling. And I came back and told my ministers, I said, this is my religion, this is my calling, because I felt spiritually so uplifted that I had never ever felt that way in my lifetime, because it is a joy to be able to reach out and to let somebody cry on your shoulder and then still be determined with that hope of going to a better and brighter future. It was wonderful, but and I wrote about it, and I wrote on Facebook, and people saw it and read it, and it was just a great dialogue that I created between Lywpeace, Greece, and the United States of America and my friends. So that was very, very joyful, wonderful time, but also very hard on my body and on my mind, because of what these people were going through. I was going through the same kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Well, share me about, because you went back the second time.
We've been doing this for 2 years now. We've gone 4 times to Greece. And there's been a progression. First, a lot of humanitarian emergency aid, saving lives, being aware and being ready and doing what you can to relieve suffering. Then we went back in the summer. What had happened, the Greek or the EU blocked the border
March
to
20th,
Greece.
yep.
And the EU, European Union states said no more refugees. And they blocked the border at Greece and Macedonia. And all the refugees flocked up to that area from the islands if they could get off. They went to the border, and there were like 18,000 people up at the border. And so all those camps that were created on the island were no longer important. And the wave of people moved. And we went back that summer, and what the Greek government had done, or the military too, had put all these refugees, these people, in abandoned buildings or on windswept plains and remote plains with that you can't even call them meadows. They were windswept desert-like areas that had scorpions, mosquitoes, very little water, lots of wind and ripping tents. They'd either put them in abandoned buildings choking with the humidity and disease, or on these remote areas. So we went back basically working with a friend of ours that we had met there. His name is Salam al-Din, who was arrested as a human trafficker trying to save lives. He was one of those volunteer lifeguards.
Right.
And right before we got there in January 2016, he was arrested, and we formed a friendship. And so Salam took us around to these different camps, and we delivered food, clothing. We did what we could, but people were essentially trapped. And then we went back again. When was it last?
In January.
Yeah.
Again in January.
Again in January.
2017.
And what had happened, people were being removed from these camps little by little and being put into apartments in Athens and other towns. In Thessaloniki was another place. I guess the High Commissioner understood that you can't have these camps and deliver services, and why not provide some economic benefit to Greece by having people by renting places where people could be. But what it did do is scatter people around. And so there was a need for services in central locations. And we helped rent a place that would accommodate 6 families, Syrian, Iraqi, Afghan, and Kurdish families. And we were able to give enough money to keep that apartment going for 3 months, and we just went back and it's still in operation. And we also provided food. The last time we went, which was just recently, 3 weeks ago, we went back knowing that there were 2 needs for refugees, or for these folks. I hate to call them refugees, they're people on the move, forcibly displaced people, if you will. One was the continuing need for humanitarian aid. It's getting worse than when we first went. And then the second is to help build these refugees build a community and remove obstacles to them getting employment, doing something of worth, something of value. So we went and interviewed different groups that were looking to form craft and vocational cooperatives to help help utilize the skills that the refugees had and make them, try to get them into the workforce. And this is a country that has basically 30% unemployment and 60% unemployment with younger people under 21. So there aren't a lot of jobs, but there are groups trying to attack this kind of issue and give these folks a chance to do coding, chance to do welding, furniture, building furniture, working on being barbers or beauty salons, giving them skills and a way to gather and have food. And so we've evaluated a few that we found that were doing really good work in a very humane, very wonderful way in partnership with refugees. And we'll be talking to our board about trying to form these partnerships and providing money and resources and volunteers to come from the United States to partner with refugee communities.
Well, 2 things I want to mention that Colin probably didn't go to it. One, every trip we took, 1 or 2 of our children went with us.
Yeah.
So that was wonderful. A blessing. And the other thing that we did is last year in the end of 2016, the beginning of 2017, we created a nonprofit called Shared Humanity. And presently we have about 8 board members. I'm the president of the Share Humanity, and Colin is the treasurer of Share Humanity. And through Share Humanity, again, we're trying to not only create awareness and education among the people of the United States of America, but among the people of the world, to say we are one human being, regardless of what religion, what skin color, what ethnic group. So therefore, we must reach out to all humanity. My concern as the president of Share Humanity is not just with the refugees in Greece. There are refugees in Rohingya which are hurting and being slaughtered. So we would like to take Share Humanity all over the world to help with all refugees in Africa, in Afghanistan, in Bangladesh, in Greece. But our main concern and attention is on the refugee in Greece. So when we went in the August of 2016, which was horrific heat, 120 to 130 degree, and these people were living in these disgusting, I'm sorry to say that, hot and terrible scorpions, snakes, everything running around. They were living there and they had no medical attention, nothing. So we were able to give some kind of help to these people. But then the second time, the third time we went as teachers. I taught at a camp, Unifita, in the north of Athens, and we took 5 people with us from our community on Long Island, which, 2 were Afghan American teachers. They both taught at the camps. We provided that opportunity for them. Colin taught and also did work with children and did carpentry and bicycle fixing, and he created a workshop there for the kids to fix their bikes. And Lisa Di Benedettos, who was a former member of our congregation, who's a psychotherapist, she came with us and she played that role. So it was wonderful. Every time we have created some change and some awareness until we built